Why, hello! Welcome back, my apprentice. It's so much fun that I get to say that now. Are you here for your next lesson? Well, come on in. I was just about to start making some homemade chai tea for us to share. Why don't you come and help me? Well, of course I said homemade. It is so easy to make and tastes so much better if you brew it yourself. If you love chai, then it's definitely worth stocking up on a few spices in the pantry. The spices you choose mostly depend on your taste preferences. I do have a set of go-to flavors that I love, but I might change it up depending on my mood. I can give you a list of some common spices that make a good base, but you can add whatever you'd like from there if you make it yourself. Since this drink is more method than recipe, you can really have fun with it and make it your own witchy concoction. As I like to say, it's your brew, so you do you. My go-to base includes fresh ginger, that's this weird bulbous finger-looking thing. I also add in cinnamon sticks, whole cloves, which are these itty-bitty twiggy bits. I'll also add cardamom, which comes in these little green pods, and peppercorns. I also have a secret ingredient that I put into my chai. This is called grains of paradise. I came across this purely by chance online, since I'd never find anything this exotic at a small town grocery store. It has a peppery taste, but it doesn't come with the strong burning feeling in the throat like peppercorns do. It also has a slight citrusy aftertaste. Don't tell anyone, but this is also my secret ingredient in my apple pie. But that recipe can be for another day. Enough of my ramblings. Back to the chai. The spices I mentioned make a very good base. From there, you can add other flavors like nutmeg, allspice, star anise, fennel, and I've even heard of people adding in rose petals. I have my mortar and pestle ready to go. Would you like to crush up the spices? Oh, thank you. Why are we using whole spices? Well, that's more of a personal preference for me. If you have ground spices on hand, that will work just fine. Just know that certain dried spices like ground ginger will be a bit more potent than fresh, so you can actually use less in your recipe. That's where the fun of experimentation can come in. Just start with a little at first. You can always add more, but you can't take it away once it's mixed in. Oh, you crushed those spices perfectly. We can add those into the pot on the stove. I already have the ginger and the cinnamon stick in there with the milk and water. We'll heat this up and bring it to a simmer before we add the tea and brown sugar. While we wait, we can take a seat at the table and we can discuss today's lesson. Okie dokie then. Today you're going to learn about divination. Which kind? Well, that's a good question. We'll only be covering one type today, since the art of predicting the future goes back thousands of years, and that's far too many methods to cover in one day. You see, people have used bones, water, fire, rocks or sticks, coins, clouds, animal intestines, blood. Well, basically, if you could name it, I'm sure someone at some point has used it to try to predict the future. We'll be using tarot for our lesson today. Why? Well, the history of it, of course. Some divination practices come from long cultural traditions passed down from one family member to the next. Others, like tarot, came about because someone wanted to make a few bucks on the side and made up a history. If it weren't for some guy who wanted to take advantage of the Egypt craze in the 1800s, tarot would probably just be seen as playing cards today. Predicting the future is already such a gray area that tarot will fit perfectly into our lesson. Why don't you shuffle the deck and I'll fetch our tea? Here you go. The thing about divination that you should know is that really anybody can do it. That's because it's all too easy for someone, even some stranger on the street, to find and say the messages that anybody just wants to hear. The true act of divination is looking beyond what we want to hear and seeing what we need to know. I see you noticed the images in my deck. This is more of a nature-themed oracle deck than it is tarot. They both work very similar to each other. I find people can, well, complicate things when it comes to intuitive matters. What? Were you expecting a Celtic crossbred or something? I would have thought by now you would have noticed that I'm a bit more unconventional. I don't like forcing a meaning on a card based on standards of interpretation or where a card is placed. I let my cards roam free and let them mingle however they choose. I look at how the cards talk to each other, how they meld or clash together. Sometimes a card needs to work with others to get a point across, or it just prefers to stand off to the side. The cards are willing to whisper their secrets, but you have to be willing to listen. Now, let's take a look at what secrets the cards have to share with us. Well, look at this. This seems quite harmonious. In this card, we can see a firefly with a white lily, and it seems that same firefly is interested in that little cluster of flowers, which is giving me some good vibes about personal growth. Above that is the moon glowing down on the plants. The moon is seen as a very magical and intuitive force. So these cards are telling me that you have growing potential for intuitive abilities. You are just in need of a mentor and a friend. Now over here is another interesting group of cards. This card shows a rose completely encircled by a thorny wreath covered in buds. The sun card is shining directly above it. This also shows me your gifted potential, but you've been either afraid to show it or your gifts haven't been properly nurtured. These cards are saying you are entering a safe space to learn and grow. This goes hand in hand with the first group of cards. In between the moon and the sun is a dragonfly. The dragonfly is a gifted aerobatic insect with the ability of transformation as it starts its life in the water, but then comes on land to transform into a dragonfly. This one seems to be able to keep the moon and sun in balance with each other. Night and day, passive and active. Those two forces may be in balance, but that is far too much pressure for one single dragonfly to handle. I think you may finally find the inner peace you have longed for here. You must be a very weary and troubled soul in need of rest. Now, this group of cards seems to be out of place. They don't seem to want to mingle with the other cards. Here we have an owl ready to snatch a meal, but it feels more like we're on the receiving end of those talons. Near that is an eagle. The expression on its face is quite somber in this moment, like it's mourning something lost or reflecting on something negative from its past. Below that is a chickadee in a cage. This bird is meant to be free in the wild, but it feels like it was tricked and trapped into that cage. Oh dear, the energy of these cards don't seem to fit with the rest of the reading. I I don't understand. Oh, excuse me. I accidentally knocked my deck off the table. Just give me a moment. Don't you worry, I can clean this up in a jiffy. The devil. Not again. Oh, 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 no, don't worry. I got them. I got them all picked up. Well, this reading tells me you're ready to dive in and explore your own personal potential and start a whole new chapter. Why don't you shuffle the cards and you lay them out this time? While you do that, I'll refill our cups and you can tell me what you see in the cards. I'll be very excited to know what you see in the cards.